Whether you are viewing on the National Television Network, the Government of St. Lucia Facebook page or YouTube channel, we are happy that you have chosen to join us. And of course, I would like to welcome my esteemed panelists, Mr. Marlon Narcisse, Director of Public Sector Modernization, Ms. Khadya Florius, Legal Officer in the Department of the Public Service, and Ms. Verlinda Pierre, who is a Registrar of Civil Status. This panel discussion is being hosted by the Department of the Public Service in celebration of United Nations Public Service Week and incidentally, digigov 1-year anniversary. We will be discussing the theme, the work landscape post-pandemic, embracing digital technology now and beyond. It's kind of a mouthful, but don't you worry, our resource panelists will be dissecting for us. We can't discuss digital revolution and digital evolution without talking about our own digital milestone. And I speak here of digigov. And so we'll kick off with Mr. Narcisse explaining the developmental pathway to our digigov platform. Over to you, Mr. Narcisse.
Thank you very much, Julita. And thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to the country and public servants about Public Service Day and the impact of technology on how we work. So the digital revolution speaks to how we in society have more or less responded to the use of technology over the years. Digital technologies will fundamentally and continuously change how we operate, how we do business, and that is, government has not been spared that either. And as a result, we see ourselves focusing heavily on digital transformation and how over time this digital transformation can assist us in providing better services to the public. So we do have that transformative type of activity within the government, and we're hoping that this project, this process can then be the catalyst for how how technology would impact our society and our people as a whole.
Let's consider, why should we be investing in digital transformation at this time? Well,
at this time specifically, if we just look at the backdrop of COVID-19 and the impact that has had on our society, and we recognize even more importantly the need for digital transformation, the need for the use of technology to provide services to the public, but also to ensure that there are internal efficiencies within the government's operations so that it becomes leaner and the total cost of operating government becomes a lot cheaper. And also, that in itself would also just help drive innovation and to foster a lot of private sector investment and collaboration with the government.
Okay, for those persons who have not heard so much about or enough about digigov, perhaps you could tell us what are the services that will benefit from this new platform?
Right, so digigov is the government's attempt at ensuring that we provide digital services to the public. And so we embarked on this project 2 years ago, and the project focuses on 154 services that government currently provide to the public, spanning across eight ministries and 13 agencies. We started off this project with the implementation of our proof of concept agency, which is the Department of Transport. And so at this time we have 17 services online, all focusing on the license renewal, driver's licenses. And the plan is for us to then move forward in the next couple of months with services for the ROCIP, the Registry of Civil Status, Registry of Companies. We also plan to have some of the civil status services online as well in the next couple of weeks actually. We've completed all of the testing for that, so persons will soon be able to apply for their birth certificate, the death certificates, and Verlinda will speak to that in a little while. But we're also focusing on other direct investment type of opportunities for services through the Department of Commerce, as well as a lot of the health services applications which surrounds business operations as well.
Now, you mentioned 17 services that are currently benefiting from that platform, but one of those that have attracted a lot of attention is the driver's licenses.
Yes.
you want to give us, tell us a bit about it, where are we now?
Yes, so with the driver's licenses, we've had over 10,000 transactions so far of persons applying for their driver's license since the 1 year that the digigov project has been implemented. And so we've made it much easier for persons to apply for a driver's license. So anyone who is a current user or current driver can go onto the platform and register. The very simple step. Once you register, then you could apply for renewal of that driver's license. The driver's license renewal, someone could actually apply for that renewal 3 months in advance. And this is part of the business process re-engineering that we have done to ensure that persons do not have to wait those long hours, on long even days and sometimes months in the past to access the driver's license renewal process. And so this has been working very, very well. In fact, we have had testimonials where persons have been able to apply, pay, and to receive their driver's license in less than a day. So, you know, we have a lot of successes in the digital transformation process, and we're hoping that we can move from success to success as we continue to provide those new services to the public.
Okay, now we want to move over to Ms. Pierre. You know, gone are the days when technology was considered a luxury or just cool having it. It has become a necessary part of our lives. Now, I know that your office is currently undergoing a modernization exercise, we call it a revolutionary exercise. You want to tell us the components of that project?
Thank you, Julita, for having us here today, for the opportunity to present or discuss the modernization aspect at the Civil Status Registry and by extension the Department of Justice, given that the Civil Status Registry is a unit under the auspices of the Department of Justice. Yes, we have realized that digital services, for any organization to be successful and for the evolving role to keep abreast with current trends, that they need to be a player in the world, that they need to keep abreast with digital systems. Having realized that the Civil Status Registry embarked on reform, which involves digitization with the support of the Public Sector Modernization Unit. The Vital Records Management System was procured for use at the Civil Status Registry, geared at complete automation of the services of the Civil Status Registry. That's been done simply because the Civil Status Registry operated primarily in a manual system of operation, and we saw the need to be able to improve the customer service aspect, that it was vital that digitization, we took that on board so that we could meet the needs of our citizens. The added component is the Vital Records Management System. Added to that is the digitization via the digigov platform, which will assist with facilitating online applications of birth and death records in the initial stages. Of course, yes, additional processes would be included as we move along, and as that happens, we will inform stakeholders of that.
So what should the public expect from such modernization efforts? What are you hoping would be the ultimate outcome?
The ultimate outcome would be, one, for modernization will serve to increase the accessibility of services. It will increase that exponentially, with emphasis at the convenience to the customer. That's what we are really focusing on. For that reason, we would like to encourage customers to utilize the online platform once it's introduced, so that they can access it via their electronic device any and everywhere. We anticipate a decrease in the long lines and waits at the Civil Status Registry, and we are also expecting an increase in the online expedited services via the digigov platform. Customers will also be able to monitor and track the status of the application using the digigov platform, and there will be a two-way communication, whereas the Civil Status Registry would be the one that was informed of processes as it happens, but now the customers would be able to have an input in what is happening, because they would be able to receive status updates as it happened on the status of the application. Additionally, automation would serve to decentralize services in a more efficient manner, to allow communities to be able to have access to the civil registration system. Modernization will also serve to streamline the processes as well as create a seamless transition from a predominantly manual system into an automated system. So persons within the various communities are expected, they will be able to access the civil registration system from various communities, and the customers will have the option not only to apply online, but also to pay online. For customers who do not wish that option, they also can go into the various locations, for example, Vieux-Fort, Soufrière, to name a few, and access the civil registration system using Service Bureau agents and to be able to pay online. So we are excited about that opportunity, given that it's aimed at improving convenience, facilitating convenience to our customers. It will save time, it will save costs. Persons will no longer require face-to-face contact with the registry if they utilize that platform. So we are really excited about such an opportunity, and this will assist our nation, not only civil status registry. The concentration is not only on civil status registry, but the nationals of St. Lucia.
Whilst you were speaking, I noted the emphasis on decentralization, so persons don't have to come from the south and come to Castries just to get this vital record.
Definitely not. You can access it from the relative, from your community. There is no need now to take a trip to Castries. So they would be able to access it within their communities or on using their mobile phones. They no longer have to come into civil status registry.
Okay, now no doubt such efforts require some sort of digital framework. Of course, there are always digital or legal ramifications. And I want to move over to Miss Florius, I'm sorry. As a legal officer in the Department of the Public Service, what sort of legal reform would be required to allow all of those services to take place?
Right, so the success of the digital transformation really hinges on legal reform. And by that I mean there needs to be an assessment of the current legislation. There needs to be advocation for change, and this is to facilitate the efficiency, the promotion of efficiency in the delivery of government services. So really and truly, the legal reform is vital to digital transformation. And we see that in order to look at that reform, there was a lot of emphasis placed on the horizontal legislation. And by that I mean the laws that directly impact the business processes. So they would be relevant to areas of digital government, such as electronic transactions, privacy and data protection, access to data, and sharing of data amongst agencies. And that's where the interconnectivity of government agencies comes in. Now, legal reform is essential to the digital transformation as it provides for legal certainty. Persons would want to be sure that when they use a single online platform, that the information is secure, that it's private, that it's protected. So that is where the legal reform and the framework really comes in and plays a vital role.
That sounds like a very ambitious undertaking, but what are some of the efforts you think that would be needed to, just to achieve that? Because this is a new environment, relatively new for all of us. So I'm sure this is something that most of your peers have not been able to delve into. So what sort of efforts you think would be required to delve into that sort of thing? Right,
so we have been ambitious enough to delve into it. And by that I mean we've started with amendments to the existing legislation. By that I mean the Electronic Transactions Act, and also looking at the Data Protection Act. Now the Data Protection Act is not in force, so all of that needs to be reviewed. In addition to that, looking at the gaps or the lacuna in the existing legislation, there is also a need for new legislation. So that is where the digigov legislation would come in, and it would speak directly to the government services and providing efficient services to our citizens.
What agencies would come on board? Would you have to collaborate with in order to get that working?
So we'd work with legal consultants, the specialists, and also with the Attorney General's chambers, in particular the legislative drafting unit. And also when we have our consultations, we'd meet with various agencies. For example, we'd meet with the Registry of Civil Status, because they have a vested interest as well.
So we're talking collaboration, and I want to go back to Mr. Narcisse. No doubt digigov would call for collaboration, public sector, private sector. What sort of synergy is required in order for us to realize the sort of outcomes that we would like to see?
Right. I think that's a very good question. We see digigov as the catalyst to build this digital ecosystem. And to ensure that this happens, we've taken several steps and made some specific policy decisions to ensure we have these synergies. And so the digigov platform would allow for the private sector to innovate and to integrate with this platform through implementation of mobile apps. We also have a policy framework called the Service Bureau Agent. And essentially what we see this as a grassroots type of initiative where persons can literally start off small businesses where they would be able to provide some level of service and connectivity for persons in the environment, in the communities, to be able to provide that access for them to access the government service. So for example, if I were to get certified as a Service Bureau agent, I will be able to provide those services to persons in the community who are not able to use the technology, or some persons who may not have credit cards or debit cards, who are just skeptical about the use of technology on a whole. So we see that as a grassroots opportunity to build around this ecosystem that we have for the digigov project. We also see a lot of opportunity for private sector investment for PPPs once we really get to a mature stage of the digigov platform. And so government is also looking at the having a trade facilitation platform as well. And through this trade facilitation platform, there are even more opportunities for private sector involvement and growth as well. So we see digigov as a catalyst for growth, not only within the ICT space, but as an economic pillar as well.
Now, we mentioned the public sector, private sector, but we know the citizens on the whole. They too form a very important component.
Yes.
And tell us a bit about what sort of citizen involvement are we looking for?
Yes, so I'm happy that you've asked that question. Because we see the citizenry as assisting us with implementation of the government's vision. And we collaborate extensively with the citizenry through our social media spaces as well. And in fact, a lot of the tweaks and the bug fixes, and we've even incorporated some suggestions from the public in improving the platform and its usage. But further to that, we want to also speak not only of digital transformation, but also digital citizenship. And we want to ensure that digigov allows for persons to be able to interact directly with government, right? And to do so, it starts with your ability to register onto the platform. You register onto the platform at this point is specifically for the transport services. However, our vision is to establish a national authentication framework, which is part of our identity management system, where anybody who registers, who then creates an electronic profile, and that person would then have a digital ID, and they would then be able to interact with government, not only to access government services, but also for them to be able to interact. There's a terminology called e-democracy, and we want to really drive that home once we get to the next phase of the digigov platform.
Okay, now we are due for our first break. When we come back, we want to look at the resilience of the digital infrastructure, especially in this COVID environment in which we are. Back in a moment.
With digigov, you can access and pay for government services using a computer, tablet, or mobile device. For more information on digigov, the services, general updates, or customer service, call our Service Bureau agency at 311. Digigov is also available 24/7 online via the website platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp. You can also visit ICT centers located in Ancillary, Niku, Moshi, Soufre, and Vieux Fort to access the digigov platform free of charge. DigiGov allows you to apply for, renew and replace your driver's license, apply for driver's license tests, and much more. Use your own device or visit an ICT center and sign up for a DigiGov account today. Take back your time, get off the line, and get online with DigiGov, serving people and businesses with that island love.
Welcome back. Before the break, we said a lot of things about DigiGov, a lot of things about the government's efforts. No doubt, very expensive, because when you're delving in that kind of those areas, it calls for a lot of investment, not just technologically, but financially. In all what we have mentioned, we want to know how resilient is the digital infrastructure. We are now faced with the unprecedented situation the world over, COVID-19, and what mechanisms are in place to ensure that the infrastructure, to ensure that it can withstand some of what we are seeing now that we were totally unprepared for. It is novel, it's new, we didn't foresee it, but how resilient are we ensuring that our infrastructure is to some of those unforeseen circumstances?
Thank you again for that question. That's a very good question. And you spoke earlier about evolution and revolution.
Yes.
And over the last few years, the government's physical IT infrastructure has evolved and strengthened significantly. We have just completed the implementation of our government-wide area network, which is a fully fiber optic network around the island with a 10 gigabit backbone. We also have currently implementing the second phase of the GINet project, which is a Wi-Fi project which would allow for ubiquitous access to Wi-Fi, to the internet, but most importantly, to the government platform. And so these two physical platforms allows us to be a lot more resilient and to ensure that there is continuous connectivity throughout the government agencies so that this integration and connected government that we speak of can continue to thrive. We just started off the implementation of another project called the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project. And one of the initiatives under this project is the implementation of a mobile data center. And this in itself would further strengthen our capacity as a government to be able to respond to natural disasters and events like COVID-19. Because one of the principles there is for us to consolidate all of government assets into one data center where we can then have that level of resilience. We've even had discussions about setting up a data embassy across the islands so that we can then push our data from one island to the other in the event of, or in preparation or in the event of a major natural disaster. So that at least we know that business recovery, business continuity is sustainable, even in the sight of that. Furthermore, we were able to respond very, very quickly to COVID in looking at our teleworking and our ability to work remotely. And we've had discussions internally at the ministry as well to look at putting a teleworking policy in place that would allow for person-specific job capacity to be able to function outside of the physical brick-and-mortar space that we're going. So we were prepared to a certain degree because we had some level of resiliency within our ICT infrastructure, but we are also looking at the opportunities that COVID has presented us now, considering teleworking, considering remote working, and there's the ability for us to be able to consolidate all of our data assets into one data
Okay, now there's always also been a lot of talk about reducing on government's physical footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, teleworking would be part of that. How is teleworking helping in any way to address that? Right,
so with the response to COVID-19, we recognize how quickly we could mobilize to ensure that we can allow persons to do teleworking. And we saw the benefits of that. So with our 311 contact center, we have divided our teams so persons are working from home. Several departments within the agency are also working on a rotation basis. However, for this to really benefit, for us to really see the benefit, we must have an overarching policy that would allow us to home in on the benefits and to see how best we can then create that teleworking space and this teleworking process so that government can see a smaller physical footprint, which will then reduce on the rental, electricity, and those various recurrent costs that continue to go up. We see that as an opportunity to drive these processes down. Further to that as well is that because we now have the digigov platform in the way it is, we will require less persons to be actually on the front line, on the front desk, providing that service to the public, because a lot of the interaction will be done online. And so we have a strong process for retooling and reskilling those staff members who would no longer be required in these processes to be able to provide a back-end function which can then happen outside of the brick and mortar process situation with government.
Okay, you didn't mention it, but I could hear you also talking about the creation of non-traditional jobs or skills in the public sector that are not seen now. How is teleworking and all of what we're talking about here helping to create that? Because this is an opportunity. We look at COVID also as presenting challenges, but it also has presented quite a few opportunities as well.
Yes, so with the retooling and reskilling, this is part of this non-traditional, but also looking at the concept of the service bureau agents, that also would allow for a direct impact to the citizenry, where they can literally build out businesses, in this area. What we've also will be focusing on as part of our digital transformation program is the bringing in persons to train them in specific areas like mobile app development, database development, cybersecurity, and put them into teams so that they can then provide a specific service to the government and also connect back into the digigov project. So again, all of these things are not existing now, but we see these opportunities coming to the front, as we implement the digigov project and we get further and further into the maturity stage of our digital transformation process.
Okay, now Ms. Pierre, as part of the Civil Registry Modernization project, we also spoke of a digital ID. What will that ID look like? Is it a normal, like the driver's license or any other ID card? And what would be the features on that ID?
The ID is actually a number that will be generated through the VitalWare system. It will be a unique ID to the individual. This means that the components that will make up that ID, it's not something that we'll discuss in the public forum, but it will be unique to the individual, so that at the civil status registry, once an application is made, we would be in the position to know that that record is actually that of the subject holder without requiring additional authentication from that individual. So
this person comes in and they present this ID card?
This person comes in, it does not necessarily have to be an ID. It can probably move into that. We can probably move into that area at a later stage, but the digital ID is actually an ID within the system to assist the civil status registry to ascertain that this is the record of the subject holder. That's what the digital ID at the civil status registry will comprise of for now.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Florius, let's go back to you. We know you are the legal expert here on the panel. With all of what you've mentioned, do you have a time frame in mind as to, I know this is a laborious effort, and but do you have a time frame in mind as to, how soon or how long the public would have to wait to see us moving in that direction?
Well, we are making efforts to ensure that these pieces of legislation that I mentioned earlier about the Digital Integrated Services Platform Act and the Data Sharing Act comes on stream in short order. I am not at liberty to give a time frame, but I can assure the public that it will be done in short order.
Mr. Narcisse, I'm sure I know that has been one of your key areas of concern. Persons, yes, have expressed concern about their personal info being out there. So perhaps you would want to expound on that.
Yeah, so just as also to just piggyback on Khadya's response, we're pretty much in an advanced stage with certain elements of the legislative review. And so, for example, she mentioned the digigov bill. This has already been drafted. We got the initial set of feedback from the Attorney General's drafting unit. We've then factored that feedback into the document. We've had 2 internal further discussions and consultations on that bill, and we're now at this time ready to submit that on official cover to Cabinet for their consideration and their instruction. So this more or less is the process by which we would like to go with the implementation of at least that additional piece of legislation to support the digital process. But I also want to reassure the public that this legislation would allow for us to ensure there is protection for their data and their privacy or information, working with government. And so both on the technical cybersecurity standpoint as well as on the legal and regulatory framework, we see the need to ensure that there is protection for everybody who access the digigov platform.
Okay, I want to go back to the driver's license. What has been the feedback from the public? We know that there has been a lot of complaints. Persons have to wait months, even in excess of a year. Sometimes you have to present a receipt in case you are stopped by the police. What has been the feedback from the public as they interface with the platform?
Right. The public's feedback has been very instructive, to the point where we factor in a lot of their feedback into some of the tweaks to make the system a little more user-friendly. But we've also been able to utilize some of the what do you call it again? Some of the feedback. I'm trying to remember the term. But there's a lot of information that's coming to us, both, those are not negative,
they make suggestions.
And they make the suggestions, but we get a lot of positive feedback, and we more or less use that on our social media platforms. And we encourage persons to also give us that feedback that is necessary, so that we can continue to make those tweaks, as the time goes by. But on the transport side, I think things have been very, very positive. As I indicated earlier, we have had over 7,000 transactions 6,000 transactions, sorry, on the platform thus far, and we only see that going to grow once we start to implement and effect other services like those at the Civil Status Registry and also those from the Registry of Companies.
Okay, we are due for another break. When we come back, we will be discussing more on digigov and other areas related to the platform. Back in a moment.
Tired of waiting for hours and days, tired of standing in lines and lanes. digigov is the solution.
Over 150 services online. Renew your license and waste no time. Contact the call center 311, that's right, and be updated on the status of your task.
digigov saves you time. digigov, get online. digigov for
I am digigov.
I am digigov.
Hi there, I am digigov.
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 digigov for the people. digigov for your mind.
For digigov, serving people and businesses with that island to love.
Welcome back. So, as we get ready to wrap up, we are actually at the end of the discussion. We want to look at implementation of all those brilliant ideas and initiatives that we have been speaking about this afternoon. But we know ideas are just ideas, unless they are actually put into effective use. So from the paper into implementation, they must be transferred into action. What plans are there to provide, I would say, training to change behavioral attitudes or mindsets, as we know that change, as they say, is the only constant. As long as we are alive, we must, try to adapt to it, but it's not easily embraced. And so our people are set, say, in one way of doing things, and so when change comes, it's not easily, welcomed. So what sort of programs, initiatives are being looked at to really change those mindsets, to get people to embrace those initiatives, those projects?
Okay.
And any one of you could answer that.
Well, at the Civil Status Registry, what has happened is that we've received adequate training with the support of the Public Modernization Sector Unit as it relates to the implementation of the Vital Records Management System. Our officers have been adequately trained, be it via data entry verification within the system. So far, the Civil Status Registry has actually entered at least 90% of the birth records from 1865 to 2001 and 50% of the death records for that same period of time. Also, the Department of Public Service, we have utilized their services as it relates to training or in leadership role, in supervision, in how to adapt to changes at the Civil Status Registry. So they are able to be a little more flexible, because right now we are working with two systems, the manual system and implementation of the automated system. So we have seen an acceptance as it relates to the staff members at the Civil Status Registry, and they have been quite supportive, the team that we have at the Civil Status Registry and the Department of Justice, as it relates to the automation and the digitization and adapting to the changes that will take place in the kind of climate that we are living in.
Mr. Narcisse?
Thank you. So in addition to that, what we've done in our process is to take a bottoms-up approach to ensure that we got buy-in and support from everyone within the departments and the beneficiary agencies. And so, for example, in the example of the transport department, we ensured that all of the initial set of feedback was received from the staff, understanding what their processes were, understanding what their challenges were, and letting them know what our vision was for that new system that will be coming into play. And so it was an opportunity for them to understand and to get buy-in from them from the start. And so we felt that was a very good approach. And so once we got into user acceptance, it was their input that they were seeing, come into life. And so we felt that it really, really benefited the project and how quickly we were able to get to implementation. However, you also have to, factor in user adoption, right? And as you said, change is a constant. However, change is very, very difficult for people at the same time. And so there is a term on the street that old habits die hard, right? And we encounter that on a daily basis when we interact, and some of the support questions that we have to respond to on a daily basis from the beneficiary agencies. And so we've taken several steps. One, continuous training, continuous engagement. And when we say continuous, we mean really holding the ministry's hand and helping them along with this process. And so for the last year, we've seen a lot of benefit in that. And we're hoping that now that we're moving to the other agencies like Civil Status, like the Registry of Companies, we will continue to have that same process going forward. So, there are several training programs that were undertaken as well, quality assurance, ethics in the use of persons' information, and general computer literacy training as well, just to ensure that persons who are knowledgeable of using the computer.
Was this a one-off, or will this be ongoing? Right,
so this is ongoing, especially that we have several beneficiary agencies. We have 13 of them. So this will be ongoing internally for the project. But also, again, as we spoke of the Service Bureau and all of the other roles that persons have to now perform on the platform, this is going to be a continuous process to refresh their minds, continuous training as well, so that they are continuously familiar with those roles on the platform, and also how they now need to interact with the public I can give you a quick example of that. So
Sure.
In the past, somebody would be sitting at the counter providing a service directly to an individual who comes into the department. Now we have a team of persons who are sitting in the back who are going through those applications that they receive online. And so we've also removed the level of a high level of subjectivity in the process, because you no longer can do a process for a friend. You know, everybody gets a task, they don't know who they're doing it for until they open up the document, and they are able to then go through the process that has been predefined for them. And then there is also a review process which is done by a supervisor. So no document leaves the system or goes to the public without review, at least 2 levels of reviews. And even in the case of the civil status, there is a double keying process to ensure that there is no errors in the data that is put into the platform.
I can speak as being a beneficiary of the training.
Okay.
Yes, and indeed, the only constant is change, but sometimes just being open to it can prove a bit difficult. I'm speaking directly to the electronic data and recording management system, which is, at first it was a bit intimidating because I'm like, wow, this looks a bit challenging, but just, you know, the practice of it, just, you know, using it on a daily basis and so on, it fosters greater productivity, accountability, and efficiency generally of the public service.
Sure. But just before we wrap up, I want to go back to our theme, the work landscape post-pandemic, embracing digital technology now and beyond. And we know that technology keeps changing, keeps evolving. And today something comes in today, and perhaps in the next 3 months, it's considered outdated or obsolete. In terms of the infrastructure, Mr. Narcisse, how are we ensuring that whatever comes, perhaps in the not too distant future, that our infrastructure can withstand or can adapt?
Yes, so that's very important. And so, as I indicated, we just completed the implementation of our wide area network, for example. But there are still other technologies beyond that we have to also consider, like 5G. You know, if we're talking about connectivity, you know, with the current 4G network, for example, the maximum download speed is like what, 15 megabits, 20 megabits at max. You know, with 5G, you can get up to 10 gigabits or even more than that at this point. So we know that the technology is constantly evolving, and this is part of our process. We have a strategy document that we're working on called Digital St. Lucia, and it will also factor in what the future state of the country should look like in the next 10 to 15 years. So we have this in mind, and with the development of this new Digital St. Lucia strategy, we're focusing on what the future state of St. Lucia will look like, using digigov as a catalyst, and as we move forward going in the future. But we're looking at technologies like, apart from the 5G, Internet of Things, where, you know, how do we then connect all of government's devices so that we have a proper handle on security, for example. Augmented reality. You know, I can see that functioning well in the tourism space, you know. And so these are things that we constantly have to look at through not only the department doing visioning exercises, but also collaborating with the different sectors, with the different ministries in doing those visioning exercises so that we can continue to be at the cutting edge, you know, not only within the public sector, but in collaboration in the private sector, driving that innovation to support government's function.
GINet, where are we in terms of the island-wide connectivity? At what stage?
Right, so GINet is completing the second phase of GINet in July of July 2021. We're actually testing the platform now. The first phase of the GINet project focused strictly on a broadband backbone using the wireless towers. We collaborated with Digicel and Flow in connecting those towers and having that broadband network there. But we've slightly changing that to because of the constant dropping of the signal because of the wind moving the dishes, etc. And so we're now focusing on doing an integration where we're going to have the entire GINet network on a fiber backbone, and then provide the Wi-Fi connectivity within the specific public spaces, like in castries, near ICT centers, near the schools, the hospital, community centers, etc. And so the second phase is almost complete, and this integration component is in process at this point in time. So I would say in the next 3 months or so, we would eventually have over 160 wireless access points across St. Lucia, providing more ubiquitous access to Wi-Fi, the internet, and broadband technology.
And perhaps you want to remind our viewers of the benefits of the GINet project.
Yeah,
so schools and students having to do their home assignments, and also to employers.
Yes, so one of the major advantages of the GINet is for us to be able to give persons access to free and low-cost Wi-Fi, right? And we realize that, you know, even with the services of Lime and Flow, the internet access to broadband is still still has a premium charge. And so the government is of the view that if we can provide pockets of Wi-Fi to the community, it would allow for persons to be able to improve on their quality of living, get access to technology, and that would allow them to do their homework, for example. You know, for students, persons can apply for jobs online, the persons can access the government platform. And we're hoping that through this connectivity, we will be able to really push this digital citizenship, e-democracy concept that we're working on now with digigov as a catalyst, so that persons can be continuously engaging with the government, and so we can also understand what their needs are, you know, and we'll be able to respond more quickly and more responsively.
And how can one tell that there is GINet services in a particular area?
Well, there are GINet signs. But once you check your Wi-Fi to see if there are any, if you'll notice that there is a GINet logo there, you can just click on that.
So the signs are quite visible, as there is in Castries.
In Castries, Constitution Park, the Derek Walker Square, and several of the other parks around St. Lucia.
Yes, yes. Going back to Ms. Pierre, what are the future plans for the registry? What is your vision ultimately for the registry?
Ultimately, we are looking at complete automation of the civil status registry. We are looking to add on services, additional services, given that now our service process with automation would be more seamless and more efficient. So it will give us an opportunity now to concentrate on additional services such as digitization of the rectification process, registration, online registration, instead of persons coming into civil status registry to do face-to-face interaction. We are looking at the opportunity exists for digital certificates, and with an automated system, it would be easier for the civil status registry to be able to transform into a digital registration system. We are also looking at additional services for one-stop service, anything to do with depots, changes of name, so that these things can be registered at the civil status registry, as well as taking on what is called a creation of a wedding registry at the civil status registry. So members of the public can visit the civil status registry if they wish to get married. We are also looking at legislative changes that will be more facilitative to the members of the public. Given that many of our legislation, you can consider them to be archaic. So not only will legislative changes take into the social circumstances of our nationals, but at the same time ensure that we maintain a standard, and we continue with our efforts on ensuring that the citizens of St. Lucia have more confidence in the civil registration system. We are hoping to create synergies with other government agencies that utilizes not only the vital record, but the data that is registered at the civil status registry in the day-to-day processes, so that the citizens of St. Lucia will have a more seamless service. There will be less frustration for the members of the public if the registry is well placed to actually, with automation, to be able to meet many of those needs. But our main emphasis would be on the customer service experience. We are looking to improve the customer service experience for our citizens, both locally and internationally, so that the Civil Status Registry, it's a complete transformation. We are looking to reform the Civil Status Registry, and then we are hoping that we will have not only the cooperation, we have had the cooperation of the public over the past few years, and we are asking for their patience and cooperation as we move forward into this digital era with the needs of the public in mind.
Well said. We want to move over to Ms. Florius, and then we are going to end with Mr. Narcisse.
Thank you. So I just want to reiterate that a strong legal framework will result in transformational change, and it would facilitate more efficient delivery of government services, and the legislation would indeed have the requisite provisions for confidentiality, data protection, also privacy, and so on. And so having this legal framework would also result in enhancing accessibility to the government services, because you have a standard that you can use to ensure that processing times are reduced and the like. So overall, once we have a strong legal framework, we can definitely see a transformational change in the provision of government services online.
Well said. And over to you, Mr. Narcisse. It's amazing how time flies. We're actually down to our last minute, I think. So perhaps you want to,
Okay. Thank you very much, Julita. I just want to say that we see a lot of transformational opportunities with the implementation of digigov. In the immediate future, we see the digigov providing a service to the private sector. For example, our digital identity platform. We can provide that as a service to the private sector, where they'll be reassured of person's identity when they come to the financial institutions, for example. We could also provide other agencies with payment as a service. So, connecting back with our financial institutions, where it looks at the debit cards, credit cards, but going further to digital currency. There is a current pilot project with the ECCB looking at how we could implement this, and as a regulatory agency at the ECCB, we could guarantee that once we get this implemented, there would be the regulatory and legal framework to guide that digital currency and operation. But we also see this as an opportunity to ensure that the grassroots part is also there, and that we have this level of inclusivity once we implement this digital transformation process. But again, we see the future for a more customized, user-centric type of system. We see government being trusted and agile as we move along. We see more open borders. Government is actively implementing a border management system as well. And so even with the advent of COVID, and if I could just say quickly that we also collaborating with the Ministry of Health in the implementation of a digital certificate, which we're hoping to launch in the next couple of weeks. And so this would now afford our citizens the opportunity to really be at the cutting edge with their COVID certificates, digital certificates once they travel. So I would just like to finally say that we would like to thank NTN for hosting us today and giving us this opportunity to at least allow our people to dream big, to look into the future and see what there is as the government continues to implement the digital transformation process. Again, if you'd like to register on digigov, you could go to www.digigov.gov.lc and follow us on our Facebook and social media handles at digigov SLU. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we've come to the end of today's discussion. No doubt the government of St. Lucia does have a very ambitious digital transformation program. And of course, it will take us more than an hour to discuss all of that. So I'm sure we'll be back very soon, right, Mr. Narcisse?
Yes, thank you.
And just let's know that, again, today's discussion was hosted by the Department of the Public Service. And we had with us the legal officer in that department, who is Ms. Khadya Florius. We also had the Director of Public Sector Modernization, Mr. Marlon Narcisse. And next to him, we had the Registrar of the Civil Status Registry, who is Ms. Verlinda Pierre. And we looked at the topic, the work landscape, post-pandemic, embracing digital technology now and beyond. I'm going to thank you for being part of this discussion. Until next time, I am Julita Peter. Looking forward to seeing you again. Bye.
Oi, boss. No, sorry. Excuse me, boss. Can I please be excused to go pay my driver's license?
Okay, I have to do mine as well.
With DigiGov, you can access and pay for government services using a computer, tablet, or mobile device. For more information,
Oi, boss.
with DigiGov, you can access and pay for government services using a computer, tablet, or mobile device. For more information on DigiGov, the services, general updates, or customer service, call our Service Bureau agency at 311. DigiGov is also available 24/7 online via the website platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp. You can also visit ICT centers located in Ancillary, Niku, Moshi, Soufre, and Viewfort to access the DigiGov platform free of charge. DigiGov allows you to apply for, renew, and replace your driver's license, apply for driver's license tests, and much more. Use your own device or visit an ICT center and sign up for a DigiGov account today. Take back your time, get off the line, and get online with DigiGov, serving people and businesses with that island love.